Hi everyone, it's Ben here, and today I'm going to be discussing a fundamental GCSE chemistry topic, the basic structure of an atom. Atoms make up everything around us, and they consist of three subatomic particles: the proton, the neutron, and the electron. The proton has a positive charge, the neutron has no charge, and the electron has a negative charge. Shown below is a small drawing that I've made, which details the proton and the neutron as well as the electron. The red spheres represent your protons, while your yellow spheres represent your neutrons. Protons and neutrons sit within an inner area of the atom known as the nucleus, while electrons sit on rings around this nucleus that actually orbit the nucleus. So a way you could imagine that is the sun is at the center of our solar system, and that is the nucleus, while the planets, the electrons, orbit this nucleus. Now, protons, neutrons, and electrons, as we say, have varying charges, or in the neutron's case, no charge. They also have a relative mass. You need to be aware of these relative masses for your exams. So, the proton, with a charge of +1, has a relative mass of 1. The neutron, with a charge of 0, also has a relative mass of 1. So for the sake of your exam, you can consider a proton and neutron to have the same mass. Now the electron, on the other hand, while it is negatively charged, -1, the mass number is 0. So the electron has a very small mass, but for the sake of your exam, it is negligible. You can consider the electron to have no mass at all. So, if we take a real-world example of an element, in this case carbon-12, it will look something like this. There'll be a number at the top, 12, and a number at the bottom, 6. The top number is your mass number, and this is the number of protons and neutrons combined within the nucleus. The bottom number, 6, is your atomic number, and this will just tell you the number of protons within your nucleus. In an atom that's neutral, which is all elements, the number of protons will equal the number of electrons. This is because the +1 and the -1 will cancel out. So as such, from this, you can work out that if the atomic number, the number of protons, is 6 and carbon-12 is neutral, there must also be 6 electrons orbiting the nucleus of carbon-12. In a similar fashion, you can work out the number of neutrons. If the number of protons and neutrons, the mass number, is 12, and the number of protons is 6, the number of neutrons in the nucleus of carbon-12 would be worked out by doing 12 minus 6, which is 6. So that's 6 neutrons within the nucleus of carbon-12. And you can do this with any neutral element on the periodic table. So the periodic table, which you get with the exam, you can use this to work out the electron, proton, and neutron number of all your elements. The information is right there in front of you. It's just knowing how to use it and how to find it. So moving on from there, we're going to look at the actual sort of physical structure of the atom and how the electrons sort of orbit the nucleus, and how we then present those electrons. So if we look at sodium here, Na, that's sodium, you can see the atomic number, which we mentioned earlier, is the number of protons within the nucleus. The atomic number is 11. As sodium is an element, it is neutral. And from that we can deduct the number of electrons must also be 11, which is how I've generated this diagram. So in the actual diagram itself, the 11 electrons sit on different rings. You can consider these rings as electron shells. So the different shells around the nucleus. And there's a pattern, essentially, with where the electrons sit on these shells. The first shell, so the first ring around the nucleus, will have only 2 electrons on that ring. And that is always the case. There are no exceptions. There are always 2 electrons on that ring, assuming there are at least 2 electrons to put on there. The ring after that will have 8. As you can see, there are 8 electrons on that second ring. The third ring, there is only 1 electron, as that makes up our 11 electrons. If there were more electrons, we'd simply keep adding rings and putting 8 electrons on each ring. So the first ring is 2 electrons, and every ring from there on out is 8 electrons. The number of electrons in the outer shell of sodium will actually determine how sodium reacts, which we'll touch upon in a future video. So that was a very basic overview of the structure of an atom. I hope it helped. I hope it gave you a reminder. I hope you learned something today. As just a quick recap, atoms have protons, neutrons, and electrons. The atomic number is the number of protons. The mass number is the number of protons and neutrons. And we can deduct the electron number from the atomic number. Electrons will always populate the first electron shell first, and there can only be a max of 2 electrons in that shell, with every shell after that having a max of 8 electrons on it. A little tip, if there's a question asking about protons, neutrons or electrons, you are always better off checking the periodic table first. All the information is there, you just have to know how to use it. So thank you for watching. In a future video we'll discuss how these elements react, ions, structures, etc. But for now, just a very basic overview. Hope it helped, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.